The day had arrived. The day that was meant to be the happiest of Sophia's life. The day she was about to marry the man she had been in love with for years. The ceremony was set in a beautiful rustic chapel by the sea, with the sun gently shining through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the floor. Guests filled the pews, the air filled with excitement and anticipation. Sophia, dressed in a stunning white gown, stood nervously at the altar, her heart pounding. She glanced over at her soon-to-be husband, Ethan, who was standing beside her, looking just as handsome as she had always imagined. The smile he gave her was warm and comforting, the kind of smile that had melted her heart from the moment they met. But there was something unsettling in the air, an inexplicable tension she couldn't quite place. Her best friend, Lily, had been acting strange all day, barely meeting her eyes and fidgeting nervously. Sophia had brushed it off, thinking it was just the stress of the big day. As the ceremony began, everything seemed perfect. But then something unexpected happened. A commotion near the back of the chapel caught Sophia's attention. She turned to look, and to her horror, she saw Ethan and Lily, her best friend, locked in a passionate embrace. The room fell silent. Sophia's world shattered in an instant. Time seemed to slow down as Sophia's eyes fixed on Ethan and Lily. Her heart sank, and her legs trembled beneath her. She had never imagined something like this could happen, especially not on her wedding day. The man she had planned to spend her life with, the woman she had trusted as her closest friend, together. As the gasps of the guests echoed around her, Sophia felt a lump form in her throat. She turned to face Ethan, her voice barely a whisper. "How could you? On our wedding day?" Ethan looked caught off guard, his face flushing with guilt and panic. He stepped toward her, but Sophia took a step back, shaking her head. "No, Ethan, no excuses. This is..." Her words failed her, and she took another step away, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. Lily, who had been frozen in shock, finally managed to speak. "Sophia, I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm so sorry." But there were no apologies that could undo the pain, no words that could make things right. Sophia looked at Lily, her heart filled with betrayal. "I trusted you both. You were my best friend, my fiancé. How could you?" Sophia turned on her heel, running out of the chapel, not caring about the stunned whispers that followed her. She needed to get away, to breathe, to process this crushing reality. Sophia ran through the garden outside the chapel, her white gown trailing behind her like a cloud. She stumbled, breathless and overwhelmed with emotion, eventually collapsing onto a bench beneath a willow tree. The world felt like it was closing in on her, suffocating her with its cruelty. Her mind raced with 1,000 questions, none of which had any answers. Why had Ethan done this? Why had Lily betrayed her? The person who should have been by her side on this monumental day had instead broken her trust in the worst way possible. And her best friend, the one person she had always confided in, laughed with, and shared her deepest secrets with, had just stabbed her in the back. Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she hugged her knees to her chest, unable to hold back the hurt. Her wedding day, the one day she had envisioned for years, was ruined. Her heart, once full of hope and love, now felt empty and shattered. She thought about her future, about the life she had planned to build with Ethan. How could she move on from this? How could she ever look at him the same way again, or trust Lily? But despite the overwhelming sense of loss, a tiny spark of clarity began to form. She couldn't let this destroy her. She wouldn't let them ruin her life. Sophia wiped her tears and stood up. It was time to face the truth. Sophia sat at a small cafe later that day, a cup of coffee in front of her, untouched. The cold, bitter liquid mirrored the way she felt inside, empty, bitter, and utterly broken. Ethan had called several times, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. There was nothing left to say, nothing that would make the situation better. A text message appeared on her phone from Ethan. "Sophia, please. We need to talk. I'm sorry. I love you, and I never meant to hurt you." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but she couldn't bring herself to reply. There was no love left between them, not after what he had done. Lily had sent a message too. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. I was weak. Please forgive me." Sophia let out a bitter laugh, reading the words. Forgive them? How could she? She had trusted both of them, and they had betrayed her in the most painful way possible. She stood up, taking one last look at her phone before turning it off. It was time to let go. Ethan and Lily had made their choices, and now it was her turn to choose her own path. Sophia knew that she would heal. She would rebuild her life. The love she had for Ethan was gone, and with it, the image of the life she had imagined. But that didn't mean she had to stay stuck in the past. It was time to move on, to find herself again, and maybe, just maybe, learn to love herself again first. In the weeks that followed, Sophia took a long, hard look at her life. She spent time with her family, leaned on her closest friends, and gradually began to find pieces of herself that she had lost during her relationship with Ethan. The pain didn't go away immediately, but she knew she couldn't let it define her forever. She focused on her career, rekindled old hobbies, and started doing things for herself that she had neglected. She took long walks in the park, read books she had been meaning to get to, and even traveled to new places she had always wanted to visit but never had the time for before. Through all of this, she realized something important. She was enough. She didn't need a man to complete her. She was worthy of love, not just from others, but from herself. One evening, as she sat in her favorite cafe, she smiled to herself. The world felt bigger now, full of endless possibilities. She had let go of the past, and in doing so, she had found her own strength. Sophia wasn't perfect, but she was real, and she was learning to embrace that. Months passed since the painful breakup. Sophia had moved on in many ways, but the scars of betrayal still lingered in the deepest corners of her heart. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but she was learning to live again. She had even started dating a little. Nothing serious, just casual outings with nice people, but nothing that could make her forget what she had been through. One chilly evening, she was walking through a local market, her breath visible in the cold air, when she bumped into Chris, an old college friend. He was the kind of person who always seemed to light up a room with his energy, a cheerful, down-to-earth guy who had a knack for making people laugh. They hadn't seen each other in a while, but his face was as familiar as ever. "Sophia, is it really you?" Chris said with a bright smile, his eyes lighting up as he recognized her. Sophia smiled back, a little surprised by the encounter. "Chris, wow, it's been ages." They exchanged pleasantries, and soon enough, they were walking around the market together, chatting like old friends. It felt good, real, just to be around someone who knew her without all the baggage of her recent past. As they walked, they shared stories of the old days, and Sophia found herself laughing in a way she hadn't in a long time. Chris was a reminder of her life before the heartache, when things were simpler and easier. They talked for hours, and before she knew it, they were sitting at a small cafe, enjoying warm drinks and easy conversation. By the end of the evening, Sophia felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off her chest. As the days turned into weeks, Sophia and Chris began to meet more often. Their conversations deepened, and something unexpected started to blossom between them. It wasn't the all-consuming whirlwind kind of love she had once felt for Ethan. It was different, calm, grounded, and for once, free from the intensity of her past mistakes. Chris wasn't looking to rush into anything. He was kind, patient, and allowed Sophia the space she needed to heal. He was supportive without being overbearing, and she began to realize how important it was to have someone like him in her life. He made her laugh again, reminded her of the joy in little things, and slowly helped her rebuild her confidence. One evening, after a quiet dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, Chris looked at her with a sincere expression. "Sophia, I've enjoyed every moment we've spent together. I know this hasn't been easy for you, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you. No rush, no pressure." Sophia smiled softly. His words were simple, but they meant more than she could express. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone truly understood her. Not as a broken person trying to move on from the past, but as someone who deserved to be loved, flaws and all. She leaned in and kissed him, not out of obligation or necessity, but because it felt right. Just as Sophia was beginning to feel more like herself again, the past came knocking unexpectedly. It was a rainy afternoon when her phone buzzed, the familiar name on the screen that she had never thought she'd see again. Ethan. Her heart skipped a beat, a mix of curiosity, anger, and sadness all flooding her at once. She hesitated before answering, unsure of what to say or what to expect. "Sophia, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but can we talk?" Ethan's voice came through the phone, shaky and regretful. Sophia took a deep breath. After everything that had happened, she wasn't sure she could handle hearing from him again. But the emotional turmoil of the past few months had left her exhausted, and part of her wanted closure. "What is it, Ethan?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He sighed. "I don't even know where to begin. I've made so many mistakes, and I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to make up for. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I need to tell you how sorry I am. I want to fix what I broke." Sophia felt her pulse quicken. She'd been through so much, and the wounds from his betrayal were still raw. She had spent so much time trying to heal, trying to move on from the pain he caused her, and now here he was, asking for a second chance. The temptation was real. Ethan's words were sincere, and she could hear the desperation in his voice. Part of Sophia still wanted to believe in the love they once had. She had shared so many dreams with him, and the thought of simply walking away from everything they had built together was harder than she'd like to admit. The emotions she had carefully packed away in her heart started to stir once again, and she couldn't help but wonder, was there still a chance for them? Chris, meanwhile, had been nothing but kind and patient. He never rushed her, never made her feel guilty for still processing her past. But now, with Ethan's reappearance, Sophia found herself torn. She hadn't felt this conflicted in a long time, and the familiar ache of uncertainty began to cloud her thoughts. She took a walk to clear her head, trying to push the thoughts of Ethan from her mind. But his face, his smile, his apologies kept resurfacing. Was he truly sorry? Or was this just another manipulation? Had he really changed? Or was he asking for forgiveness because he couldn't bear the idea of losing her? Sophia couldn't deny that she was scared. The idea of trusting someone again, of letting go of the past and moving forward, was terrifying. But was that fear enough to hold her back from the love and happiness she deserved? Sophia spent days grappling with her emotions. She spoke to her family, her friends, and even Chris, who had been nothing but supportive. Everyone told her the same thing. The decision was hers to make, but she had to follow her heart. In the end, it was a conversation with herself that gave her the clarity she needed. She thought about the life she had before Ethan, how happy she had been, how free, how much she had changed. She realized that no matter how much she had loved Ethan, his actions had left scars that would never heal. His betrayal had shattered the trust between them, and without trust, love was impossible. And then there was Chris. He had shown her a different kind of love, steady, patient, and kind. He had never pressured her, and he never tried to fix her. He had simply been there, showing her what it meant to be truly loved without conditions or manipulations. Sophia stood by the window looking out at the rain, feeling the weight of the decision settle within her. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't go back to the past. She had to choose the future, the one where she was whole, loved, and free to be herself. She dialed Ethan's number one last time. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan. It's over," she said softly. The call with Ethan left Sophia with a sense of finality. She had made her decision, and there was no turning back. But even with the relief of knowing that she had chosen herself over the toxic pull of her past, there was a lingering sadness in her heart. Saying goodbye to someone she had once loved was never easy, no matter how much pain they had caused her. But as the days went by, she began to feel more at peace. The weight of the past no longer hung over her, and she found herself more present, more connected to her life and the people around her. She was learning to trust herself again, to believe that she could make choices that would lead her to a better, happier place. Chris continued to be there for her, though he never pushed for anything more than what Sophia was ready for. He respected her space, her pace, and never tried to make her feel pressured. He was, in many ways, the breath of fresh air she needed after being trapped in a toxic relationship. One evening, after a quiet dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, Sophia realized just how far she had come. Her heart was healing, and while it wasn't fully fixed yet, it was no longer broken. The scars would remain, but they were a part of her growth, a reminder of her strength. As Chris reached over and gently took her hand, Sophia smiled, feeling the warmth of new beginnings. Sophia's life slowly started to return to a sense of normalcy. She resumed her routine, focusing on her work and hobbies. She spent more time with family, rekindled old friendships, and even started to plan trips to new places she had always wanted to visit. Life was beginning to feel vibrant again, full of possibility. Her relationship with Chris deepened, but it wasn't rushed. They continued to take things one step at a time, and for the first time in a long while, Sophia wasn't afraid of her own happiness. She had learned not to settle for anything less than what she deserved. Love that was built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. She began to notice small things about Chris that made her feel more connected to him. The way he always listened when she spoke, his quiet support, the way he made her feel like she mattered. He wasn't perfect, but neither was she. And yet together, they made something beautiful, something worth building. One evening, as they sat by the lake near her apartment, watching the stars reflect on the water, Chris turned to her with a serious expression. "Sophia, I don't want to rush anything, But I want you to know that I care about you. A lot, he said, his eyes soft but steady. Sophia felt her heart flutter, but instead of fear, she felt warmth. It was the kind of love that was built on time, patience, and trust. The kind of love that had been missing from her life for so long. I care about you too, Chris, she said softly, her smile genuine. And in that moment, she realized that true love doesn't rush or force. It grows slowly over time, and it's the best kind of love. As months passed, Sophia's relationship with Chris blossomed in ways she hadn't expected. With him, she felt like she could finally breathe freely, without the weight of the past pulling her down. He respected her, challenged her, and made her feel safe, a stark contrast to the toxic dynamics she had once endured with Ethan. Sophia started to realize that true love wasn't just about passion and chemistry. It was about partnership, mutual respect, and the willingness to grow together. Chris didn't try to fix her or mold her into someone she wasn't. Instead, he supported her through her journey of healing, allowing her to rediscover herself without pressure or judgment. The more she thought about it, the more she understood that her relationship with Ethan had been built on illusions. They had been so caught up in their idealized version of love that they had forgotten the real work that goes into a lasting relationship. There had been too many compromises, too many sacrifices that weren't healthy, and most of all, too much trust broken. But with Chris, everything felt different. He didn't promise perfection. He promised understanding, respect, and patience. And that was something Sophia had never truly experienced before. One night after a quiet dinner together, they sat outside under the stars, talking about their dreams for the future. It was in that moment that Sophia realized she was ready to look ahead, to embrace a future that was hers, full of possibility and love that was real. Sophia had spent so much time focused on healing from the past, but now she was looking forward to what lay ahead. She realized that healing wasn't a destination, it was an ongoing process, something that continued to evolve as she did. And she was finally ready to embrace the future, not as a woman defined by her past, but as someone who had learned from it, grown from it, and was stronger for it. Chris had become a constant in her life, someone who not only supported her, but also encouraged her to be her best self. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was all she needed. In fact, she was starting to believe that love, in its purest form, wasn't about the grand gestures or the perfect moments. It was about consistency, trust, and being there for each other when it mattered most. One evening, as they sat in the living room of her apartment, Chris turned to her with a playful grin. "So, what do you think about taking this relationship to the next level?" Sophia smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I think I'm ready for whatever comes next," she said, her heart light. As she looked at Chris, she realized that she had found something rare, a love built not on perfection, but on authenticity, trust, and shared dreams. Together they would face whatever the future held, and it would be enough. As time went on, Sophia and Chris continued to build their life together. They traveled, explored new passions, and grew as individuals and as a couple. The past, with all its pain and mistakes, was no longer an obstacle. It was a part of their story, a chapter that had led them to where they were now. And while Sophia would always carry the lessons from her previous relationship with her, she had learned that true happiness didn't lie in the past. It lay in the present, and in the future they were creating together. One day, after a quiet afternoon spent with family, Chris pulled her aside. With a twinkle in his eye and a hint of nervousness, he got down on one knee. "Sophia, we've been through so much, and yet, here we are. I love you, more than words can say, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, her heart full. "Yes, I will." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she looked at him. As they embraced, Sophia realized that this was the kind of love she had always dreamed of, sensible, patient, and built on a foundation of trust and respect. And this time, the love was real.